West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin kind of tiptoed around his thoughts on the approval of further direct payments on CNN over the weekend. Let's take a listen to that.
So you've given some mixed messages on whether you support sending $2,000 checks to Americans who earn $75,000 or less. Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, as well as your new Senate colleagues, Ossoff and Warnock, all support sending these larger checks. Are you on board, yes or no?
Jake, that's not a yes or no question. I'm on board by helping people that need help. People that really can't make it, people that don't have a job, they can't put food on their table. I'm in total support of helping them. Sending checks to people that basically already have a check and aren't going to be able to spend that or are not going to spend it, usually are putting it in their savings account right now, that's not who we are. That we have done an awful lot of that. It's time now to target where the money goes.
So the response to Manchin was quite swift. A new PAC was formed aimed at pressuring the West Virginia senator to back $2,000 checks.
That's right. So the PAC, No Excuses, has reserved radio ad time in West Virginia and features ads narrated by Corbin Trent. He's co-founder of the PAC, founder of Justice Democrats, and a former spokesperson for AOC. And Corbin joins us now for more on that. It's good to see you, Corbin. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Pleasure.
So just outline a little bit about what you guys are doing there and about how this new initiative goes, and just in general reaction to, Joe Manchin being king of the United States of America.
I mean, that's what it seems like he feels is the case at this point, right? Is that he's now going to be able to set the direction for the Democrats. He's got the wheel of the party, and he's going to drive the agenda. And that just doesn't make sense. It wasn't Joe Manchin that flipped Georgia. It was Ossoff and Warnock that did that. It wasn't Joe Manchin that just turned out a huge number of people to vote in the presidential. That was Joe Biden that did that. And right now you've got Joe Biden, who seems like maybe he gets that we're in a moment right now that's going to require swift action. He's talking about spending trillions of dollars on infrastructure. He's talking about going big when it comes to sending people direct payments. And then you got people like Joe Manchin that are going to be sort of, trying to pull back the party and hold us back. And I think we just don't have time for that. We've got, 6 months maybe to get some work done, to put some, to actually have an impact on people's lives and make people think that they made the right decision by giving Democrats the, sort of the steering wheel on this for a little while. And if we don't do something, I'm afraid we're going to keep going down this rabbit hole that we've been going down for the last, 10 years. Mm-hmm. So for Joe Biden to pop up and sort of start trying to signal that he needs to be in charge of things is crazy. So that's what we decided to do with this PAC, is to explain to people in West Virginia at this point specifically that Joe Biden's trying to stand in the way of you and $2,000. It's going to Joe Manchin rather is going to stand. Senator Manchin is going to be standing in the way of you and $2,000. I mean, and just what we heard him, how we heard him talking there on Tapper, if people are having a hard time putting food on the table, I mean, you've got to be destitute and hungry for some of these people to want to give you any help whatsoever. And I think that's just a really bad way of looking at it. I mean, we want to keep people from being destitute, right? We want to not just think of our government as a way to help you once you're actually in the gutter, but a way to also help you stay out of the gutter, too.
Yeah. Well, and just to provide a little bit more context, because the CNN comments from Manchin came after he'd given an interview to the Washington Post. He got asked about the $2,000 checks, and he says, I don't know where in the hell $2,000 came from. I swear to God I don't. That's another $400 billion. Then he tried to walk it back and say, I'm not absolutely opposed, but I want it to be targeted to the right group. So just respond to that criticism, because I think one of the things people don't understand is, look, first of all, the unemployment insurance system that we relied on heavily during this time is sort of like broken down and hasn't worked all that well for people. But also there are a lot of people who fall through the cracks of that system and don't benefit from it. That's why these checks have been so effective, because everyone gets it and it's straightforward. There's very little red tape. There's very little bureaucracy. Had tremendous benefits for people.
And it's already targeted, right? There already is some mean testings to it. I mean, if you make more than $75,000 individually or $150,000 as a family, then you don't get the checks, right? So there's already some means testing that's happening there. And what we saw in the last round of checks is that it helped lift more people out of poverty in America than had been done in decades. So, yeah, you're right. there are people I know personally that haven't gotten their unemployment checks from the beginning of this pandemic problem, and there's no accountability for that. So there's nothing that they can do if the system is broken and not functioning. And then there's people that just didn't have a normal W-2 job that haven't been involved, haven't been able to get money. And yeah, the $2,000 checks is going to be able to help people, I think, survive over this winter. We're seeing things get worse, not better. December saw jobs cut, I think, for the first time in 6 months. So, to think that we can just close our eyes and hope for the best would be insane at this point. And I think the other thing Joe Manchin said was absolutely not. So he's been, the mixed signal is pretty well leaning towards I'm not into this $2,000.
Yeah,
and I don't think that people need help. So.
Right. And so, Corbin, is this a broader strategy that you guys are going to be employing now that Democrats do have control of the Senate? What are you guys thinking for the future?
Yeah, I mean, so the name No Excuses, I think, sort of says a little bit about what we're thinking, and that is that every time Democrats get into power, they come up with a lot of excuses of why they can't do the thing they would love to do to help the American people. And I think it's important that we have an entity. In this case, we got this PAC that's going to be able to run ads and sort of shine lights on those excuses and why those aren't valid. Even if we talked a little bit, we work with a group called New Consensus, which is a think tank that's doing some work too on what can be done around policies. And one of the things that they highlighted a few months ago is that even without the Senate, there's a lot of things that Biden can do. So the fact is that there, with the Senate majority, even as slim as it is, there's a lot that can be done to help the American people that can get us building back better. I mean, that's their own plan, right? Build back better. So we just want to help hold Democrats accountable to the plans and the promises they've made and make sure that Democrats like Manchin, these sort of fringe right-wing Democrats, aren't able to get in the way. So we'll be here the whole time.
Corbin, last question for you. The assumption, as soon as the Senate flipped, the assumption rightfully was, oh, God, Joe Manchin is going to control every piece of legislation. Everything is going to have to meet his standard of approval. But, the Senate is tied. Obviously, Kamala Harris is the tie-breaking vote. Could just as easily be the progressive senators that, are really exerting pressure and putting the screws to leadership to move things in a more pro-worker direction. Do you think we're going to see much of that?
I hope so. I mean, you look at the House, it's a very similar situation where you've got somewhere between a 4 and 6 seat majority for Democrats. So any 5, 6 maybe House members could do the same thing, could hold things up, could demand concessions. But for some reason, it's usually the right-wing extremist Democrats that get the courage to stand up and say, that they're against things like helping Americans and helping working people and helping struggling families. So hopefully we'll see some progressives in the House and progressives in the Senate say similar things, but for better policies.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you, Corbin. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Coming up, there's an update on law enforcement response to the siege at Capitol Hill and some discussion around proposals for a new national security law. We're going to take a look at that when Rising continues.